education nation for NBC News
and is now one of America's leading education advocates as chairman of the National Family Engagement Alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most compelling voices of our time. Please welcome Speaker for Life, Mr. Byron B. Garrett.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Well, good morning. Good morning. It's all right, you could have let Zed keep playing. I'm good with that. Every now and then I need a little energy for the morning. So I am certainly excited to see each and every one of your smiling faces, partials and spaces, dentures and braces on a day like today. So it's good to be here, without a doubt. You got to lighten up. You're in D.C. There are too many people that are already serious, like way serious. They're just a little ways up the street. You'll see them, I think, tomorrow. Is that right? How many people have been to the Hill before? Okay. How many of you feel like you got anything accomplished when you went? So these are the mandatory things you should do to help build your profile with your respective member. You should use social media, so tweet, Instagram, do not Snapchat. I'm just saying they have no idea what Snapchat is, so that does not help. But you should also then tag them in any photos that you take, because then they'll want to follow up with you. At least their staff will, who are about your age. I'm just saying, like that's the difference between being on the Hill. But I'm certainly excited to be here. I live in the D.C. area, as I was telling some of the officers. I actually live in this area, but I find myself on the road most of the time. I travel about 80% across the country and around the globe. And so when I got the call saying, could I make my way here? I was like, oh, here is home. So that's a really, really, really good thing. And most importantly, outside of you being here, my folks fly in later on this evening. So I really need to be home because I've got to clean my house up. Otherwise, my mother will say something very negative about me in front of all my friends who will be visiting as well. So I'm certainly excited, though. But I will tell you, the work that you get to do and the opportunity that you have is simply incredible. I mean, I always think about young folks and what you get to do from a career perspective. And the reality is you get to make a conscious decision to do something different. And when you do, your life begins to change. I've got this kids book that came out this past week on the 15th called There's Greatness on the Inside. And the mantra is, if the mind can conceive it and the heart can believe it, then the hands can achieve it, because it all begins in the mind. So I have no idea what you plan on doing 2 years, 12 years, or 20 years from now. Have no idea. What I do know is that you have the capacity to achieve and exceed greatness if you choose to, that it is simply a choice. The same way you ended up in this very room today on this particular trip, in the seat that you are seated in this moment. There are many folks who thought that they probably deserved that seat, but guess what? They don't have it. And there are many folks who are like, I don't know why you want to be in HOSA. You got to wear uniforms and stuff. Boo on you and your idea about me and my uniform. I look good in what I wear. I'm just saying. Just saying. Because the reality is those are the same folks 10 years from now going to be knocking on your door saying, you remember me from school? Like, I'm trying to get a job and y'all have a vacancy. You'll be like, no, check me out on LinkedIn because I don't really know what you're doing. I haven't talked to you since then. Why do you all say it like that? It's the real deal. This is the real world. That's how business works. The same people you see going up the ladder are the same ones you see going back down. So I tell folks, you should be careful who you speak to. You have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, which means you should see and hear twice as much as you ever say. There are many things that I've thought throughout my lifetime, and even this particular stage in life, but I also understand there are many things I can think, but it should never leave my lips. Does that make sense? Yes. Like my folks are coming in today. And my mom's going to have a laundry list of things. And I don't want to respond to every single one of them, but I'm smart enough to know that I can't. Even though I want to, and it's my house, I still can't. I can't. It does not matter. I was actually in South Carolina last week as part of my book tour, and I was visiting my folks in South Carolina. Okay. I've been to 48 states, which means I probably could name about where everyone's from, but I will not mention the 2 that I haven't been because I don't want to make you feel bad. I haven't been because I haven't been invited. That's the only reason I go by invitation. I'm just saying. But South Carolina, kudos to you, and North Carolina, and Arizona, and Maryland. Those are all states that I lived in. I went to grad school over in California at a little small place called Pepperdine that sits up on the hill. Yep. So I find myself across the country, as I mentioned. But as I was home literally last week and I was visiting with my folks, my mom said, I feel really bad because you didn't come to see me. I just now understood why you're actually here. And I said, no, I really wanted to come. You all are retired. I haven't had a chance to see the house because I've like literally flown to Columbia. They live 10 minutes away, like 3 times in the last 6 months. And I have yet to physically make it back to the house since we started doing renovation. So I felt bad. But I was really there because I was seeing Janet Jackson in Charlotte on Friday, and I said I have the entire day, so I will drive down and visit and do what any son should do because I am the favorite child. I have 2 older brothers, dumb and dumberer. I mean that because we are not the same. We're all drastically different, and I do all the things you should do. And leadership is about that. It's about doing the things that you're expected to do, even when other folks don't necessarily support the direction that you're going. So you find yourself in a city today that is supposed to do work on behalf of the rest of the country, and in some cases also influence the world. But then we find ourselves on a week like this particular week where we have one individual that can literally fly from a totally different country, make a stop south of us, and then stop in this particular city, and will probably accomplish more in the next 5 days during his visit than most of Congress has done in the last year. I'm just saying. I'm just a fact. Oh, and the person I mentioned, I didn't say who it was, but I'm pretty sure you know by now that the Pope is coming. Like, it's a pretty big deal. Like, I'm excited because I got tickets to be on the lawn, but I don't want to go because it's like 3 million people. So my folks are going to go with one of my friends who must love me dearly to take them out because I can't do it. Just saying, it's a lot of folks. But the reality is I don't know what you plan on doing. So I don't know how long you plan on staying in healthcare. I don't know whether you plan on being a physician. I don't know whether you plan on being a researcher. The reality is if the mind can conceive it and the heart can believe it, then the hands can achieve it because it all begins in the mind. See, I have the good fortune of meeting folks that have gone from Luxury Avenue to Losing Lane and Losing Lane to Luxury Avenue and everywhere in between. Now, I will tell you that there are a couple commonalities. I was watching, I don't know if you saw, the Emmys were on last night. So I was catching up on a little television. So I need to work on my talk. But I hadn't decided to tune into the Emmys until I got a tweet and a text from one of my friends saying, you need to tune in right now. Because I have a good friend who was on a major show this past year, and she was being nominated, so I was so excited. No one expected her to win. Like, she even walked and took the stage and said, I'm supposed to have a speech, I don't have one, and it amazes me every single time. You know, you watch all the award shows, it doesn't matter what award show it is, I should have had a speech, unless you're Nicki Minaj, who always thinks she's going to win, or you're Miley Cyrus. I'm just saying, that's just my bias, right? They always have speeches prepared, even when they don't. I don't have a speech really ready, but you know. Yeah, y'all follow that, yeah. So as I was watching, and I'm trying to do 2 things. So I'm trying to watch a TV show on my device, but at the same time, I'm trying to watch the Emmys, and I missed the actual announcement, so I wanted to see the reaction. I wanted to see the crowd's reaction, and I wanted to see her reaction, and she was going to take the stage, and I missed it, which is why I'm glad we can see anything we want to see online in real time. So I literally said, okay, let me just do a refresh on my site. I'll see what popped up, and sure enough, she had won. So I'm sending this tweet out, and I'm telling you this because there will be moments in life where you may be the nominee, you may be the applicant, you may be the intern. And there will be a whole host and chorus of folks who believe that that is someone else's opportunity, but society decides to conspire in your favor, and you discover that it is your moment in time. Whether you get the award or whether you don't, that particular moment is still yours. Because people get confused. We think unless you get the accolade, unless you actually walk away with the trophy, that is the only time you win. There are many things that I've seen folks who believe they should have gotten something, and then after the fact they realize, I'm so glad I didn't get that specific opportunity because it prepared me for this one. Does that make sense? It's so easy to sit back and say, oh yeah, you know, I could do better, I know this person. Unless you live their life, you don't know it. Unless you've literally physically been in their household and woke up every single day and walked their journey, you don't know their story, so you may not want the pain and baggage and strife and issues that go along with that. Be thankful for the own story that you get to create. And I get excited because every single day I have air in my lungs and I have blood in my veins. It allows me to write a brand new story today. Regardless of what happened yesterday, it makes no difference. Do me a favor, everybody stand up where you are. Stand up where you are. If you are physically able, stand up where you are. I want you to get a little space. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to ask you to do a shoulder massage. Touchy-feely, that's not my keynote thing. I can't do that. I'm too focused on business and getting stuff done. That's just my perspective. What I'd like you to do if you're physically able, square your feet and shoulders, as my mentor would have said. Dr. Maya Angelou said, Mr. Garrett, you never slouch, you never lean, the world will bend to you. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I was trying to lean in the photo. She said, oh, no, everybody else will lean towards you if you don't move. And I was like, you are so right. This is cool. Anyway, so it is true. So as you're standing there, I want you to realize that right now in this very moment with both your feet, You are planted in the present and the present only. If you're physically able, I'd like for you to do me a favor. Take your right foot and just place it behind you. And right now, you have a choice that you get to make. You have one foot that is in the past and one foot that is in the present, which means you have nothing physically available to allow you to step forward into the future. Does that make sense? Because I meet people all the time that think they have some human strength and some supernatural ability to allow them to just transition back and forth. Take your right foot, bring it back to the present, and then take that same foot and step forward into the future. You all are the future health professionals, is that correct? And so what I would like for you to realize right now is that you get to make a decision. You can take your foot back straight to the middle, to the present. You get to make a decision every single day that you get up, whether you will step forward into the future or whether you will take a foot and step back into the past. I posted on Instagram the other day that every single time you look into the past, you're taking your eyes off of your future. And so I have no idea, as I said, what you plan on doing. What I do know is that you are physically able to make a conscious decision every single morning, even before you get out of bed, how the day will be. Whether you will stay stuck where you are right now, whether you would choose to try to step back to where it is you were, or whether you will decide with all of your being to step forward into where it is you want to be. Give yourselves a hand and have a seat very quickly. I have to say that because I meet amazing leaders like you, and every now and then, because you're talented and skilled and get elected or appointed, we think that that means we don't have challenges that face us occasionally. I will tell you that in this day and age, the world changes so quickly and at such a rapid pace that we all face different type of challenges. For example, if I were to pull out my cell phone and scroll through my messages for the morning, whether that's email, text, or other Facebook Messenger, whatever messages I got throughout the day, if I were to scroll through, I probably could view every single situation or issue as a challenge, because most of the news I get in an email is an action. It's an item saying, I need you to do, I want, or it's a request or a demand. But I get to decide every single morning, even before I get out of the bed, how will I approach the day? And I made a decision many years ago that I would not allow a single person, individual, organization to disrupt how awesome my day will be. You do not get to be the captain of awesome in my life. Does that make sense? I have a simple philosophy that I share with folks. I call it, whoop, shut it down. So the fact is that you don't like what I have on today. Unless you can buy me a brand new suit, your opinion really does not matter. Whoop, shut it down. You may not like the sneaks that I have on today, but I like them. Unless you can buy me some red bottoms and some shoes, your opinion really does not matter. Whoop, shut it down. And you may not even like the institution where I decided to matriculate, but unless you want to pay my full tuition like they're probably doing, your opinion really does not matter. Whoop, shut it down. So I choose to wake up every day with that philosophy and that approach. I approach every single thing with that level of tenacity and excitement. Not in a negative sense. I don't even say a single word to my friends. I don't even call them haters. I just call them obstacles. There are folks who are in the way that I need to go over, around, under. Somehow they're between where it is I am and where it is I want to get to. You do know that everybody who says that they got your back, they don't have your back. You do know that, right? You know that's leadership 101. You do know that, right? Oh, I like you. No, you don't. You like my position and what I'm doing right now. I learned that in high school when I was trying to go out on a date. Someone told me, it's okay. I learned the hard way, but I learned then. That way I don't repeat the same mistake later. It was really simple. Wanted to go out on a date. I asked Jessica if she wanted to go. She said, great. What time will you pick me up? I said, well, it's going to take me about 20 minutes to ride my bike over there to pick you up, but I've got a nice little basket and we're going to be good to go. And you laughed the same way she did. It's not funny. I just wanted to go on record. But I have talked to Dr. Phil about it, so I feel much better. And then she decided, I am not riding on a bike. I said, well, you got two options. You can stay at home or you can get on the bike. You can either get on the handlebars or you can get in. Otherwise, we're not going nowhere. Well, when you get something that's more sophisticated to give me a ride, you let me know. So I pedaled my bike on down the street. Went to homecoming a few years ago. Happened to stop in because it was our reunion. And I'm driving my nice little rental car down the street in South Carolina, a little small city called Seneca. And I actually passed the little bus stop. I roll down the window. Hey, good to see you. I know y'all think I have issues. It's okay, that's what, they're mine. I'm dealing with them. And it didn't matter whether I was in a rental car or not. I wasn't on a bicycle. What she could not see was the future and where it is I wanted to be. There are so many folks that you will encounter in life who don't have the capacity or willingness to embrace where it is you say it is you want to be. Like my dad was one of those folks. It was so interesting. He kept saying, you should be an engineer. I'm like, Daddy, I can't spell differential equations or linear algebra. I'm not even sure what either of those subjects are, but I am certain that I should not be taking them since math is not my subject. Oh, you'll be fine. I did great in math. I said, well, you know what we should do when I go to college this year? You should come to school and take the classes. Because I don't want to be an engineer. I have no desire. That is not my interest. But engineers make X amount of dollars. I know the data. I can recite it. You've been telling me this since I was like 4. I can tell you who makes the most money, what career profession. He should have told me I should have gone into healthcare. That's what he should have done, because healthcare is like one of the fastest growing segments. Plus, there's always a need because, you know, the population is steadily getting older, so you will always have a client. I'm just saying. You have job security. Most other folks don't have job security. They're trying to figure out, how do I create a new industry because my industry is now defunct. You think I'm kidding. Anybody remember something called MySpace probably when you were in elementary school? Where's MySpace? Oh, everybody's on MySpace. You got a MySpace. You're like, no, I don't. Right. And you know, MySpace then evolved into, can you follow it? What came next? What? Y'all are not in agreement. I got like 12 different things. Facebook came next, you think? Then Twitter, somewhere, and then Snapchat. I have to, and for the adults in the room, just so that you know, I have to tell people this because my parents get confused. My dad still is trying to understand why it's a hashtag and not a pound tag, and I'm just trying to explain to him, because when he grew up, it was a pound symbol on the telephone, and I said, well, why did it equal a pound in the first place? He couldn't answer it. And case closed. Dropped the mic. I walked off the stage. I'm telling you. And my mom, if she calls it the book of faces one more time, I'm like, yes, Mom, it is a whole bunch of faces. Because it's a whole bunch of faces, but it's not a book. It's on the screen, so that doesn't make sense. She's like, I know. I'm so confused. Just don't. Don't do the Facebook. I solved it very simply. Mama, you know people who you don't want to speak to anymore. They can find you, and then they can send you a message. Well, why would I want them to find me? I don't want to be on there. Exactly. And then I ain't got to worry about she trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm just saying. Don't clap to that. That's not cute. Because he was like, yep, that's why. But let me explain something to you how the world works, because you have to prepare yourself for a job that does not yet exist. Repeat after me. I must prepare myself, for a job that does not yet exist. So I'm going to give you a quick example. So you have this little site called Facebook that made Mark Zuckerberg and several other people multi-billionaires. Not overnight, but literally over about 6 months worth of nights. Just saying, by the time they went public. And I'm not incredibly technically savvy. However, I do know in doing the research that Snapchat and Facebook, the difference between the two is about 100 different words of code. For those folks who code and do programming in the room, if there is anyone, FYI, 100 words of code. But I want you to understand that when Snapchat came out, their IPO valued them at around $40 billion. And we thought that when Facebook went public, that their valuation of $10 or $12 billion was a lot. I want you to understand that the difference between where Facebook was and where Snapchat is 100 words of code. I'm just saying. I wish I was technically proficient, because I might figure out how to write 100 words of code and do the next variation of Snapchat. And for the adults in the room, what I wanted to share with you, what happened, very simply, was students realized that mom and dad could get accounts to set up a fake account, and then they could follow them and see what they were doing on Facebook, versus when I get on Snapchat, I can just post something, and when I send it, it's gone. I'm just saying. For the record, for those who are in the room, since you plan on having esteemed careers in the healthcare field, and typically those fields come with some level of scrutiny, know that whatever you do online lives online for eternity, even when they say it doesn't. It's like Google saying, I don't read your emails. If you read the privacy statement on about page 8 towards the bottom in the size 6 font that nobody can read, because even when you try to enlarge it on your device, it's still only about maybe 0.8, it still says, yes, we scan your information. I think all sites and systems scan our information for whatever reason. I don't know, and I can't figure it out. But what I do know is that every single time I want to think about what's next in the world, all I have to do is pull out my phone. Everybody has a social media device, is that right? iPhone, Windows, Android, some variation thereof. Anytime you want to figure out what the next big idea is, I want you to reach for your phone and figure out if there's an app for it. If it's not, it's an opportunity. You follow me? Every single time. Can you imagine? You probably can't. but some of us in this room can. Not actually being able to get on Waze to get directions. I'm so thankful for Waze as a GPS app. It's like the best thing. It's social media meets GPS. So you can tell me that there's a red light camera to the right, that there's a police car to the left, and there's a traffic pileup in 0.2 miles. Here's a detour for you. And I don't even have to do anything but put in a destination. It tells me all of that. The same way those of you that flew here, which is the majority of the room, would have never thought in a million years that I could literally log in online, get a boarding pass sent to my phone, walk to a counter, see a security person known as a TSA agent, scan my boarding pass, show them a driver's license, walk through that area, take all my stuff off so I could go through security, get to a gate to only do the same thing over again and then get on a flight and go to my pre-assigned seat. There was a time I could just walk to the gate. I have two nephews that I raised when they used to travel with me. We could just walk to the gate. I didn't have to fill out all these documents saying whose children they were, where they came from. I could just put them on the plane and just say, you're going to see your mama, bye. Can't do that anymore. Now you got to fill out everything, and she has to be on the other end and actually claim them and sign everything else and make sure the information is exactly the same. Never could have told you. Anybody know how old the iPhone is? 7 years, approaching 8. Want you to realize that for over half of your life, in most cases, you've never known life without tap, touch, swipe technology. Tap, touch, swipe. Meaning that you can do anything that you choose to in the comfort of your phone. You can transfer money from account to account. You can buy a business or buy stock or a domain. By the way, just my suggestion for you, if you have not purchased your own domain, you should. So therefore, when you become Surgeon General or you become incredibly infamous as some noted surgeon, therefore you're not paying someone else for your name. Does that make sense? Anybody got their own domain? I'm just curious. No? Oh, GoDaddy.com. Easiest thing. It's $9.99 a year. You spent that in Starbucks this morning. I'm just saying. You think I'm kidding? I sell on average about 5 domains a year. I'll hear some great catchphrase like "Chow Boo" or "Girl Bye." And I'm thinking, oh, the people who are saying that on reality TV are either too busy or not smart enough to realize that they've now monetized an entire industry. So let me go ahead and buy the domain. So when someone says I want to search and then use it for a site to sell products, then it becomes an industry. Y'all look at me like I'm crazy. No, it's not genius. If it was, I wouldn't be standing here. I'd be in Fiji on my own private island. But we're working on it. But I say that because in the arena that you look to be in, and I'm so thankful that folks like you have an interest in healthcare for people like me, because, as I mentioned, you have an industry that always has to push the envelope in innovation. There's some new challenge, some new issue, some circumstance that we've yet to solve for. And it takes the best minds to do that. I'm so thankful that folks are committed across the board. You and all of your colleagues that you represent throughout the entire association recognize the need and positioning to do that as a unique opportunity in this day and age. And I will tell you, for folks who may not, young people get to do amazing things every single day. Every single movement in history is started by a young person. If you do not believe that, you can look at what happened just this past week. I don't know who's from Texas, but I don't laugh and chuckle at the circumstance. I laugh at the notoriety that's gained by one 14-year-old student who created a clock that then gets invited to the White House and an invitation to Silicon Valley and a whole gift package over the weekend from Microsoft. I'm just saying, all because they exercised some idea to do innovation. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wish we had social media when I was a kid, because I made clocks and trees and all kinds of stuff. I wanted to get invited to the White House. I wish Mark Zuckerberg would call my cell phone. I'd be like, hello, this ain't you. Click. And be like, Nene Leaks. Boy, bye. No, I'm just saying. But when I think about that, and then I juxtapose that with a young lady named Malala, who you should know if you don't. One of the best books that you could read. An actual student who says, I simply want to go to school so that girls have the opportunity to get an education because it is unfair. And what does she do? She gets shot trying to go. So when I hear your colleagues, not your specific ones at HOSA, but the ones who are not quite as academically savvy as you probably are, saying, I don't understand the value of an education, and then I look at somebody like Malala who literally got shot just so she could go to school, and then she becomes the youngest person to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Or I look at Gabrielle Turnquist from the state of Florida, who at the age of 18 actually graduated with her law degree from the UK, the youngest person in the world to ever do so, and she was actually American and not from a different country. I'm just saying. I know for a fact that young folks have the capacity to do whatever it is you choose to. If the mind can conceive it and the heart can believe it, then the hands can achieve it, because it all begins in the mind. You get to make that decision. Every single day the sun rises and every single day the sun sets. You decide what path you will follow, what course you will chart. And some of you at some point in time in your life will find your way back here to this very city that we consider to be the nation's capital. And you may even find yourself sitting in the Dome or sitting in the White House trying to figure out, how do I improve the condition of humanity based upon the position that I sit in? But I will tell you that it does not require an office or title in order to do that, but you begin by changing the world where it is you are at this point in time. You don't have to wait for tomorrow or some great announcement or some press release recognizing you in some unique role, but you get to do that starting where you are right now. Your origin does not equal your destination. So this past weekend, I was in High Point, North Carolina on Thursday, did an event with some school kids, and one of the reporters who was there was like, oh, you know, we're having this discussion as a state. We don't think that we should have creative writing in schools anymore. What do you think about that? I said, let's see, you're a reporter. Part of your job is to write. What do you think about that? Because someone's basically saying that your profession is irrelevant. And they went, huh? I'm like, do you write? I mean, I know you type, but you know that's still writing. It's the concept of getting a thought out that you can share with someone else via means other than just articulating it. And the program I was visiting in the afternoon was a group of 3rd to 5th grade students who decided they wanted to either be photojournalists or they wanted to be creative writers. Before I even had a chance to read the book, 12 hands went up. And I looked at the report and said, do you think writing is a lost art? I'm just saying, as we scan this room of 66 students, let's see who has the first question. And the first person asked, do you think in the next 10 years we will do something different than other than physically write and people will no longer read books? And I stopped and I said, well, you know, we have an esteemed member of the media here who would love to answer that question. And I turned to the reporter who was there, and they gave kind of some answer. And then the young girl, being a true 3rd grader, that didn't answer my question. I'm like, next question, please, because that one ain't for me, boo. I'm going to move on. Because you look like you're going to call somebody out. You're not calling me out. But it taught me in that moment that even in this day and age, our youngest folks recognize the need to develop skill sets and be engaged. I literally spent the first 35 minutes just answering questions about their capacity to do stuff. What does it mean to be an editor? And how do you come up with an illustrator? And who gets to draw? And then one little boy even posed the question, well, I want to know who owns it. I'm like, well, the person that buys the book. No. Who owns the book? So the person that wrote it, the person that drew the pictures, because I draw, but she over there, she writes and I put it in her book. So don't I get half? And I'm like, y'all need to work that out. In 3rd and 4th grade, y'all need to solve that. That's not for me to solve. Well, do you have a publishing company? Because I want to get my book published. And I'm sitting here listening, and I'm like, these are 3rd to 5th graders. Like, wow. And then I come back home to a city like this that says, oh, young people are falling by the wayside. I'm like, the lies you tell, you have not traveled the country. These kids are on point. And then I wish, like, the Secretary of Education would be standing here right now. Like, wow, we actually have folks who are interested in healthcare. Yes, and they don't just talk about it. They're actually doing something. I'm just saying that that's where we fall. And so the opportunity for you to do amazing things to have an impact does not have to wait until tomorrow, until you graduate, until you get your first position. It starts right now because you have the care, the concern, the ethic, the passion to realize that you can actually help transform other folks' lives, that you can transform obstacles into opportunities and turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones because you choose to every single day. So as I get ready to close, I did tell Jeff I would reserve a couple minutes for a couple questions. I got asked the question literally almost as soon as I walked in. The question was, looking at your background and all the things you've done, how did this happen? Like, how did this unfold? And my response and answer to that question is always the same. It's about doing the work and not focusing on who gets the credit. So if there's one thing I will tell you about success in life, success does not happen overnight, but it happens over time. And you have to be willing to do today what other people won't do to have tomorrow what others never will. And so you should think at the top of your mindset, it's about doing the work. It's about being excellent. It's about actually exceeding the expectation, regardless of whether or not other folks are looking and saying, hey, Byron did that. People who are looking for folks who did great work, they're not looking for the name. They're looking for the quality that's produced. Does that make sense? And so I found myself moving from Arizona to D.C. and then briefly to Chicago and then back to the D.C. area. And I look at all those connections, like sitting in another youth organization similar to this when I was in high school and actually walking into a banquet and seated at a table with a gentleman who became my mentor and now a longtime friend who at the time I had never met before. I'd only seen him on television and in magazine interviews, and he was most famously known as being Oprah Winfrey's boyfriend, Stedman. Like he had no name. And so I sat there with him across the table, and I'm sitting here engaged in having a conversation. As I told the officers, I guilted him into being my mentor in front of all the other board members. I was like, do you have a mentee? He's like, no, I don't. You know, my schedule. I said, but isn't this organization around helping young people achieve their greatest potential? And don't you feel compelled that you should have someone like me as your mentee? All you got to do is tell me where you're going to be, and I will get myself there. I will show up. Can he say no in front of everybody else? Absolutely not. It was one of the most interesting conversations. And of course, that evening, I did not know that Oprah would later be present. So then, being the most articulate teenager I was at the time, I literally had no words to say as she sat down at the table other than, and I'm sure she was looking at me like, is he okay? But she's used to that. It happens all the time. But I say that to you because you never know where you will be and who it is you're talking to. It pays to put your best foot forward at all times and always be clear and concise. People talk about the elevator speech. You should have it down. When someone says, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you need? You should be able to roll that off as if you can roll off your own name. In fact, I would argue that you should be able to say that better in many cases than your full name. That people should know what you stand for. So much so that even when you're not in the room, people still speak great things about you even when you're not present. The same way some folks say negative things about folks when they're not present. You see both ends of the equation? Mm-hmm. So I will take a pause for the cause. Question, comment, thought before I wrap up. Pause for the cause. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything, you were talking about how they underestimate students in America. Is there anything that we can do as a student organization to help better the image of students who are pursuing healthcare professions?
Great question, and yes. I mean, there are things that you all do from a national perspective, but I would say from a student standpoint, there are things you can do. So those of you that spend your time writing great messages, if you don't blog, you should be blogging about your experience and why it's important as a student to be engaged. You should be talking about what should happen. Instead of folks telling you this is the new education policy, this is what you need to know, someone in this room should be able to say, no, I've been on internship interviews for the last 2 years, and this is what I've seen firsthand. Being able to tell that story from your perspective is uniquely critical because other folks can't. If I'm on the Hill and I'm in Congress, I can't tell that story because I'm not a student, right? And so you all have a unique platform. Stuff in this day and age can go social media and viral overnight. If Auntie Fee can cook and become a sensation and end up on Tosh.0 2 weeks later, don't tell me the amazing work you're doing can't happen and be translated the same way. We've just got to think differently about what we value and how we prioritize that particular work. That becomes one of the biggest issues. And you have a unique platform because you have access to media outlets that did not exist before, that people literally become famous overnight. In my case, I tell folks over some nonsense. As negative as that may sound, but I'm thinking in the grand scheme of things, how important is this one issue that we actually allowed this person to occupy space and time on the front page of a newspaper or even in the evening news? I remember Antoine Dotson, if you remember that particular video. And then we had all these songs. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is absolutely crazy that I can be on social media, but then I look at the other end. And I see somebody like Todrick, who was on American Idol, lost, and now he has his own MTV show, right? His whole show is centered around him making a video, which he can't really do in one day, but that's the concept of the show. So it tells me that even where you sit as a young person, you can utilize social media or other assets to tell your story unlike anyone else because you have the authentic story. As an adult, we don't. We can tell someone else's story, second, third hand, but you can tell your story in a much more compelling way and then enlist your friends and colleagues to share positive news and stories as opposed to the exact opposite. That would be my recommendation. Pause for the cause, question, comment, thought. Great one, by the way. All the way in the back. We'll go there and then we'll come forward one table. Yep. You got to speak really, really loud because you're all the way back. I'll meet you in the middle.
So you're saying if you have a dream, you need to act on it instead of waiting for it?
Say it again so folks hear.
Because you're saying if you have a dream, you need to act on it now instead of waiting for it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
That was a statement, but yes. And you also, I saw another hand. Yes, ma'am? Yep. What's the most empowering thing that I've ever heard? Ooh, what's the most empowering thing that I have ever heard? So my mother, when I was in elementary school, played a song for me by this lady who is now incredibly well known. She was known well at the time. I didn't know who she was because I was in elementary school. But there was this song called There's a Dream Out There with Your Name on It. And I remember my mother singing the lyrics and saying those words to me every single day throughout elementary school. And it wasn't until I actually got into high school and college that it's like the mantra of that particular song kicked in. And so the notion that regardless of where you are, what people have said, where you come from, what you look like, big, tall, small, indifferent, regardless of that perspective, that there actually is a dream that you can achieve if you just choose to. It has your specific name on it. And my mother would be very, very clear. While my dad was saying you should be an engineer, my mom's like, I don't care what you want to do, but you're going to be successful. And so that was probably the most empowering thing that I've ever heard. If I were to quantify, and I've talked to a lot of folks, just because, I will clarify, just because someone's famous or has status, that doesn't make them empowering. It just makes them famous and status. Just because you have a stage and a microphone does not mean that you have said anything worthwhile. It just means you were talking, taking up space. I'm going to leave that right there. Great question. Yes?
So earlier you said that for the older generation to see us better, we should use social media and all that. But how do we meet in between? How do we appeal to the older generation? Because all we know is social media and all that. How do we appeal to them? How do we meet in the middle?
How do you appeal to them and how you meet in the middle? So the last two presidential elections, to give you some sense when folks say that, that older audiences don't understand social media, the last two presidential elections were won based upon social media platforms and status. So to your point, that is a huge shift of momentum. When I can say something in a tweet, which is social media, but it becomes the evening news at 6 p.m. that's covered on CBS and ABC and BET and Fox and CNN and C-SPAN, and then it also makes all of the Sunday news shows, it tells me that it has the potential and capacity to transcend generations. Just because my mother's not on a tweet, she can tell me, because she watches Wendy Williams every single day, do you know about this Chloe girl? She got a talk show coming out. I'm like, which Chloe? Oh, you mean Kardashian. It's got to be the only Chloe that can be famous, right? My mom's like, no, you know, there's the other Chloe with the perfume. Mama, that's not the same. That's not who Wendy meant. I understand. It's a C and a K. Well, why would she spell her name with a K? That does not matter. That's not the issue. My point to you is that you can figure out how you meet in the middle, whether you do the traditional outreach, so you can go to Rotary clubs, social organizations, and have conversations with folks in those particular settings. You should also figure out how do you engage. I'm a huge fan of being able to connect with someone from a personal perspective because I don't believe everything that I read online, because it's filtered and biased. By the time you've shared and reposted and added your hashtags, it dilutes the original message. I'm just saying. That's my perspective. But I would tell you that there are always two ways that you can utilize. So you can use social media in the traditional sense as you know it. But then to your point, you can also figure out how do I engage with that other audience. But I'm telling you, if it becomes newsworthy, I don't care how that news originally started, it becomes mainstream. Folks who are in the know from an academic, business, political perspective all can tell you who Ahmed is right now. They didn't know who he was last week, but they could tell you, all because it went viral. And literally, y'all know that was like in a matter of 2 hours. And every issue in this country that we focused attention on over the last 12 months have all started the same way. All Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. I mean, all of those campaigns, literally overnight, somebody had an idea. They said, I'm going to use the right hashtag. I'm going to post it in the right settings. And I got all of my friends to pile on. I guarantee you, if we look at the, and I should know this, but I don't know the actual total number of HOSA members right now across the country. But if you think about the exponential impact of your association just by sharing one consistent message in one hashtag, and if you said on National HOSA Day or some National Healthcare Day or some particular movement you wanted to support, that the entire organization would buy into that thought, you become a tipping point for the conversation nationally, literally in a matter of minutes, because it's going to trend based upon sheer numbers. Has nothing to do whether it has substance or not, based upon sheer numbers and metrics. Great question. Pause for the cause, question, comment, thought before I get ready to wrap up. Yes? I always get that question. So, yeah, where do I see myself going in 10 years? I couldn't even tell you. Because 10 years ago, I thought I was like at the top of my game. I was traveling around the country and speaking. I had a book out, so I was excited. I could not have told you that I would do the things that I'm doing right now. And as opposed to being at a stage where I say, okay, in the next 3 years, I must accomplish X, I actually scan differently. So instead of just, I actually scan from a width perspective. What are the different opportunities I can be engaged in that allow me to have an impact that are the best utilization of my skill set and talent? And so could I end up on a TV program? Possibly. Could I end up on a national speaking tour? Maybe. Could I take a political appointment? Probably not. Because I like working on the outside, not the inside. The inside has too many limitations from my perspective. But those, so when I look at it from that perspective, I no longer look and say, what is the single thing that I need to accomplish? To me, everything right now is around impact. What's the ability to actually expand the messaging and go deeper as you look to engage folks? So for example, you'll see in another 2 months, I have a clothing line that I'm launching. I'm known for doing shirts and shoes. I'm not doing shoes yet because they're too expensive to start with, but I'll be doing a whole line of shirts. That'll take up a certain amount of time that fits within my messaging and my branding. I'll do a whole nother series of children's books in 2016. And so for me to say 10 years from now what that looks like, hopefully I'll be sitting on a yacht in the middle of south of France, but we'll see in the meantime. I'm just saying, y'all are invited. I have the yacht, you can come get on. I want like a Beyonce, Jay-Z yacht. Yeah. And the sad thing is you have that on record, so that's not a good thing. It's on video. Let me leave you with this thought. It's the very first book that I wrote with my nephews in mind. It's called The ABCs of Life. I've shared it for literally 2 decades now, believe it or not. But I find that it still holds true today as it did the first year I wrote it. So my oldest nephew, who now stands 6'9", I would babysit him on the weekends in college. I want you to think about that. So you're sitting here telling someone that you're trying to date that no, you don't have children, but you're babysitting a 3-year-old in your dorm on a weekend? Yeah, nobody believed that. Like, it's true. It's true. But now he stands 6'9", and I knew nothing about education at the time. And Brandon would say, Uncle Byron, A is for apple. I'm like, that is so stupid. Who is talking about fruit? You need a different word. I knew nothing about education or cognitive development. So we started working on a different series of words. And I was like, oh, yeah, let's do attitude. Let's spell it out, sound it out. I was like, oh, yeah, mama got attitude. Not quite that kind, but yes, that's an example. So we wrote this book, and it's taken on a life of its own, literally, internationally. And so I'll leave it with you as my thought and wish for you. It goes this way. Take the A to accept the challenge. Take the B to believe in the cause. Take the C and know that the choices you make, not the chances you take, determine success in life. Take the D to define yourself and develop your own goals and objectives. Take the E to expect failure, but also expect success. Take the F to fight on, be faithful, and finish whatever it is you start. Take the G to gravitate towards positive, successful people for the right reason at the right time. Take the H and harness everything within you, not to be rich or famous or wealthy, but just to be happy. Happiness is something money can afford if it was, and be traded on New York Stock Exchange, and would all be down in the dumps on any given day. Take the I to initiate the process, to get involved, to learn how to, and every now and then, just let it all hang out. Take the J and know that jealousy gets you nowhere, but you must always justify your actions. That's why you take the K to keep on keeping on and kick those negative habits and negative folks to the curb. Take the L to learn how to learn, so you still learn something new every single day. And then if it is important, you can think the great hymn for more money, more money, more money, more money. But remember the great song that says the more money you have, the more problems you will see. That's why you measure your worth based upon what's inside your head and heart instead of what's parked in your driveway or hanging in your closet. Take the N to never, never, never say never. You take the O to organize your life and order your steps. Take the P and do me a personal favor. Put first things first, but always practice whatever it is you preach. Take the Q and quit quitting. Quitters never win and winners never quit. Or take the R to respect people based upon their skills, talents, and achievements and respect them on nothing else. Take the S and stay strong to your values and beliefs and don't sell out to your friends or even your family as you take the T to travel the long road to equality because we still have a long ways to go. Take the U to utilize your network with someone else to do well in life. And then take the V to visualize it. Only when you see it can you be it. Take the W and work, 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 till all your work is done. But my personal favorite letter of the alphabet is simply the letter X, which stands for X-ray your own life for improvement. Not mine, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, your cousins, Pookie, Ray Ray, Boo Boo, anybody else. X-ray your own life for improvement. In other words, you have 24 hours in a day. 12 hours to mind your business, 12 hours to take care of your business, leaves you 0 time for anybody else's business. X-ray your own life for improvement. Take the Y and yield to opportunity, and above all things, take the Z to zealously strive to achieve. Those are ABCs of life, and I'm Byron Garrett, speaker for life. If not now, then when? If not you, then who? Thank you all very much.